report going after the University of Florida College of Medicine, claiming that it's pushing woke ideology on students. The report, published by a group named Do No Harm, accuses the school of, quote, infusing equity and anti-racism into the Doctor of Medicine program. That includes things like anti-racism resources for white people and guidelines for being a strong white ally. The report also points out that the College of Medicine's admissions page is an example. In one post, you see students kneeling and holding a sign that reads, "White coats for Black lives." Critics call it indoctrination, but advocates say these measures are necessary.
Those things are based on evidence, and they're based on our very sincere desire to do the best thing for all the patients we should be caring for, which is everybody, regardless of what their backgrounds are. Far from being indoctrinated, I think the students are some of our strongest advocates for trying to make sure that they have a broad view of what affects health.
Dr. Saphier, of course we're starting with you.
There's a doctor in the house.
Is there a doctor on the couch?
There is, yes.
Listen, implicit bias as well as racial and cultural factors directly influence medical outcomes. You cannot dispute that. Black women tend to get more aggressive breast cancers and don't benefit as much from early detection, as well as COVID really hit Black communities. That is where the focus should be, is caring for our patients. But that's not necessarily what's happening right now. They're talking about medical school admissions. And so because Black applicants have been low, in order to get more Black applicants as well as higher Black admissions, they're lowering the bar for them to actually get into medical school. Instead of coming up with funding and support for programs to elevate Black applicants so that they can be competitive with their peers, they're lowering that bar and they're lessening the metrics required to get into medical school. This is an insult to the Black community, and this goes absolutely against our Do No Harm, which is supposed to be to provide the best care for our patients, not make it easier to treat patients.
I think that's a really important nuanced point you make, because when I was at the White House, we saw a disparity in COVID treatment, and we tried to rectify it as best we could via policy, making sure community health centers were surged with COVID resources so there was equitable distribution of care. But that's just it. We want equal care for patients, not indoctrination of med school applicants as they apply to become doctors of medicine.
I don't want indoctrination. I want a doctor in this nation who can figure out what's gone haywire with my blood pressure or something like that.
There you go.
But you know what? It shouldn't surprise us that the University of Florida College of Medicine is woke a little bit, because every college is woke. What is surprising, though, that is the fact that it's in the freedom state of Florida. And, you know, I used Google because it's very reliable. And I think the University of Florida gets something like $50, $60, $70 million of funding from the state of Florida. It wasn't too long ago when Governor Ron DeSantis went after Disney for being woke. I wouldn't be surprised if the governor of Florida goes after the University of Florida for exactly the same thing.
That could happen. You never know. But look, Kat, they do have a new president coming in. They have Ben Sasse coming into the University of Florida. But you make a good point, Steve. I mean, this is pervasive. It seems like everywhere we look, there is just an agenda of colleges to indoctrinate students in the way of the left.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm always someone who's going to be a little bit wary of the government getting involved in terms of saying, you know, what points of view are versus are not worth hearing. Obviously, there is free speech of these professors and these people at the school, at this public university. When you look at what people value, though, I don't think anybody, as you mentioned, goes and searches for a doctor and kind of looks at what their views are on different social issues or political issues. They look at what their record is on getting people better from whatever sickness they may have. And that's what the focus should be in medicine. Absolutely.
Yeah, I do want to get the response in from the University of Florida. So this is Doug Bennett. He's a spokesperson for the College Care. He said that we have a holistic admissions process that welcomes students from all backgrounds, including those from underrepresented backgrounds. The statement goes on, wanted to get part of it in there. Go ahead.
I just think generally they've overcorrected here. And it takes me back to, do you remember in June of 2020 when we were all in our homes, small businesses were shut down, and then a bunch of medical professionals had an open letter where they said racism is the real virus. So get out and protest. It's imperative. And yet we're not allowed to go to the grocery store. People are not allowed to open their doors of their business. And then you look at University of Minnesota, same thing. They had all their graduating doctors in the medical school take a woke pledge, and they invoked gender, binary, libraries and all sorts of things that should not play into competence. Competence should be the coin of the realm here, not ideology. And we've yet to see the impact of this. What happens when they come in schools like this in droves and they graduate and they don't have the requisite skills for their hands not to shake during surgery? I don't want that, not at all.
Yeah, and Dr. Sapphire, so this appears to have been a bigger problem. Apparently, University of Florida, they have this library called George A. Smathers Libraries, which are used by med students. They have a diversity, equity, and inclusion team, and then one of the libraries named a section after Karl Marx, but they wiped the name after it faced public backlash. So I assume when you went to med school, it wasn't about Karl Marx and Black Lives Matter.
Oh my gosh, it's certainly not. And while it is important that we continue to learn about racial inequities and what we can do to improve the medical care for them, it shouldn't be indoctrinating into our learning process. And it certainly shouldn't be lessening the care and our education, because the more time you're spending on these topics, the less time you're spending on pharmacology, physiology, and other things that are so crucial to medical school.
And organic chemistry. Remember that professor?
That's undergrad, yes.
Yes, from NYU. Let's bring him in because he'll make sure you learn orgo and not other things, social experiments. Coming up, you've